On December 31st, 2019, a woman was kidnapped by two men in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and later found dead by the police, which shocked the entire country.
As we break down America's most shocking cases, undeniable truths, and the evidence everyone else missed.
All senselessly taken away when the real estate agent and mom was brutally murdered in Minneapolis.
But the judicial system is very, very political. The body in the crime scene, because if the body was found at the crime scene, then the suspect would already be the suspect.
She thought she was meeting a buyer, but the address wasn't real. The listing wasn't even real. A burner phone, a fake identity.
Sometimes rulings aren't based on case law, they're based on personal feelings.
And the conspiracy that stretched across two cities.
Hill of Justice is sponsored and produced by Jermaine Delmas Studios.
Welcome to the channel as we break down America's most shocking cases and expert insight, undeniable truths, and the evidence everyone else missed. She thought she was meeting a buyer. A private showing in Maple Grove, Minnesota, on New Year's Eve. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious, but the address wasn't real. The listing wasn't even real. And the people waiting inside, they weren't looking for a home. They were looking for her. A burner phone, a fake identity, a house chosen for isolation, and the conspiracy that stretched across two cities, two shootings, and two trials. So when we have the first conviction that collapsed, and the truth nearly collapsed with it until we were able to go ahead and break this down in an investigative manner. And it all comes down to structure. So what we have here, brother, is, a retrial that revealed the investigators what they had already known, but they had to go ahead and go through this step by step. And we're going to break down exactly what this case is all about and reconstruct it the only way we know how to. And that evidence didn't just tell the story. It really cornered the killers. And this is how. So welcome to the Hill of Justice. I'm Jerome Hill, former police officer and state investigator. And with me is retired Sheriff Victor Hill. So we take a look at the chaos and certainly the impulse, not the opportunities. And we're going to break that down right now. And once you see the structure of this, you'll understand how the investigators rebuilt this entire case from the ground up. And really it gives you insight into why the retrial ended the way that it did. And so this was organized chaos. And quite truthfully, this was terrorism that was wrapped up into a domestic case. So I want everyone to stay with me because we're going to get into the why at the end of the show. And so at this point in time, what we have is we know that gunshots, at least the first gunshots, the case starts way before then. And you've seen that time and time again. And so I want to take you back to the moment where this all began and how this all happened. So you have a woman by the name of Monique Baugh, and it wasn't like they found her. They selected her. And how they went and selected her was they used her profession. She was a real estate agent. And so as you and I know, this was an opportunity that these individuals used against her, because what is that real estate agents do? You have to have a bunch of trust to go ahead and know that somebody wants to look at a listing and they call you and you want to go ahead and show that house. So they requested and insisted on a private listing on New Year's Eve. So let's break that down. Isolation? Is that what you think? Because that's what I'm thinking.
Right. And maybe they're thinking that they're not leaving a clue, because if she's going on a particular listing, they think they may leave more clues when the investigators start checking. I think it's called MLS or something like that. But and then also it's going to be hard for a house that is on MLS. It's going to be hard for you to stage a murder there, because she's going to have to let you in. You don't really know. You know what I'm saying? So that's probably why they went with the private listing. But it
They
appears they
did.
left a whole lot more, because let me guess, when they killed her, they didn't take the cell phone with them, did they?
Ding, 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 ding. We
Yeah,
have that and more, right?
right.
So, what the reality was, yeah, we know that this was an isolation. This plan was already in motion. And more to your point, that is the geofencing that we always, and we covet that, because naturally we have the real estate agent who has a cell phone. We have the burner phone that exists, and they followed her in a U-Haul. And the U-Haul, which was which was gold to the prosecution. They were able to go ahead and use the GPS of the U-Haul to go ahead and triangulate all those devices,
Mm,
and it showed the structure of a conspiracy on what was going on. And what they used the U-Haul, once they got into the home, they kidnapped her. They hogtied her and put her in there. And one of the most ridiculous parts of this case, and I just don't understand why people think they can get away with murder like this. So you and I both know, hey, guess what? She was she was a goner from the get-go. They got her into the home. Whether you want to go ahead and call it chivalry or not, they went and closed the door, and behind her, they didn't walk beside her. They walked behind her. Telltale sign, it's over. You know, they walked her all the way to the garage. And that's when the assault began. And so this address that they used, this fake address that you used, was all for isolation. And they used geography to control this.
hmm
100%, you know. And this is how we study crimes too, because we talk about opportunity and how to create victimhood with all this. So they knew that this house had extreme visibility issues. The rooms were bottlenecked for movement or lack of movement. The garage was across zero visibility. And so this was actually a perfect exit to use the U-Haul to go ahead and transfer her body. And thus, this is where we're at. And we've seen where, in other cases, where terrain helps individuals so much. Case in point, we take a look at snow. I would love for you to tell the audience, when it comes down to homicides, what is the weather? What does the weather patterns? What do you want? Do you want rain? Do you want snow? What element would you use if you were going to go ahead and plan something like that to help you along to maybe clear away some of that stuff?
Well, I tell you, that's a two-edged sword, because just like some of it can maybe help cover stuff up, it can also leave a lot of clues. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes inclement weather is just bad, because I mean, now you got mud footprints, footprints in the snow, footprints in the mud, stuff like that. It gives us the ability to look and see if something's been disturbed or not. So sometimes it can be a two-edged sword. Now, depending on if it's something severe, like some flooding and a lot of things get washed away, then that can help the suspect sometime. You know what I'm saying? So it's a
Mm-hmm.
two-edged sword with weather.
Yeah, and I've seen it that way, where
Yeah,
hard rains, and particularly if you're in a concrete jungle, shell casing, so on and so forth, they get wiped in, they go into the storm drains, and so on and so forth, where you have big time difficulties constructing a crime scene,
right,
and many
right,
things get lost, you know,
right.
especially over in a hard rain when you have a period of time where somebody's not coming outside and you got all that stuff washing away. I think snow helps in that double-edged sword that you're talking about, to our advantage. But we've seen it in messy situations with a blizzard.
Yeah.
where things got messed up. So we had a lot of digital evidence on this, and thankfully, this digital evidence did not blink. It was able to go ahead and solve this case a little bit more. So they bring her from the U-Haul to all the way over to his home. Okay. Um, and as they are traveling over in this predictable corridor, of course, everything is definitely coordinated. They take her to a street. They shoot her 3 times at close range.
Hmm.
They wanted to inflict as much maximum pain as they could to this individual.
Why?
And here's here's everything that comes up with this. This is where the crime becomes ridiculous. The guy in itself was mad at her boyfriend. And at this point in time, he believed that the boyfriend snitched on him about a drug deal. And instead of going after the guy, he went after the woman that he loved
Hmm.
and wanted to destroy everything about him. Had other people involved in this. And then you had thereafter, they don't stop there. So the second part of this conspiracy begins where they go up to him while he's in the home with his children and they shoot him. He survives. The heroes of the story happen to be his children because they immediately called for authorities. And it was those precious seconds that was able to go ahead and help the investigators piece this whole disaster all together.
And you
They
said, no, go
yeah
ahead.
they really they really wanted to go ahead and have you believe that this was not a premeditated attack. As everybody had their own individual lawyers trying to go ahead and figure out how they can go ahead and get off on these charges, which is pathetic on that end of it. But here we have individuals who believe that, no, this wasn't premeditated. This happened organically because this is, she did this and he did that. You were about to ask a question, and I don't want to go ahead and predict what you're about to ask.
Actually, keep going. You kind of answered it already, but keep going.
Right. So, as it turned out, they wanted to go ahead and create confusion. But here's the problem where a lot of noodleheads do not understand. You actually, when you rented the U-Haul, when your digital footprints were all over the place, you already created structure of what happened. It wouldn't have mattered what you said. Your actions already put it together. And these are things that we talk about all the time. From Maple Grove to Minneapolis, ping, 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 ping. Her phone, your burner phone, the GPS of the U-Haul. Where did you think that you could even get away with something like this? I mean,
Well,
gas stations, traffic lights.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, even before phone technology, one thing that all good homicide detectives always knew is that they always leave something. Now it's almost impossible not to leave something because of two things: phones and cameras.
Hmm.
Cameras are usually everywhere now. So, when I went to homicide school back in the day, they used to always say, well, unless a person can float into a crime scene and float out, you're going to leave something, especially if there's a violent exchange. Because if there's a violent exchange, there's going to be some type of exchange. Just like when two cars collide, if one car is white, one is red, and they collide, there's going to be a transference of paint. But now we've got a situation where virtually every store you walk in, virtually everywhere you go, someone has at least a ring camera or something like that. So there's going to be some type of image like that. And the cell phone technology is unreal now. Most of these cell phones, if you know what you're looking for, you can tell everywhere that person's been in the last 30, 60 days or something like that.
Hmm.
So So I think a lot of people don't think about that because most crimes are crimes of compassion. But even when you got folks like this that think they're planning something, they're really not planning, because you've got to really, really be on top of your game now to plan something where you don't leave a trace. And you got to almost be completely off the grid. And most people, the cell phone now is like secondhand. It's something that everybody has now. So unless you're absolutely not going to have a cell phone at all, no GPS locator in your car, and you're just going to leave a whole bunch of clues. Cell phone
Yeah,
technology is how most people are getting caught doing everything now.
easy, right? Because even the deleted message logs, we can recover that. You're dead to
Absolutely.
rights. And then try to explain where you got not only the shell casings that we've recovered in two locations that match the same weapon, but you also got the projectile that went in and killed her and then nearly ended his life.
Exactly.
What were you thinking on that end of it?
Exactly. Or they probably not thinking.
And
Yeah.
it felt like you're going to go ahead and muddy the waters by arguing that, and really doing Three Stooges and pointing each way, saying he did it. No, he did it, and this is what it doesn't make sense, and thus, you keep on having these same problems over and over and over again, where people just believe that, and no matter what their impulsivity is about a crime, um, they they are having temporal decay in terms of thinking that they can get away with this. It's
Exactly.
just impossible
Exactly.
in this day and age. I mean, we're talking about so many issues around in this case. I mean, we could go into and certainly there was a retrial in this, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the fact of the matter is that there's so much overwhelming evidence against you that you can't possibly, and I know prosecutors are salivating. They're going like this is going to be easy win, and so on and so forth. And they had that right to believe that, right? How would they even know that the judge's instructions in which they gave to the jury wasn't clear enough? And so thus the 2021 conviction against Wiggins was thrown out by Minneapolis Supreme Court. Where are we at with
Well,
that?
well, let me tell you this. One thing we got to be honest about is a court system. It's a coin toss. Just because you're innocent don't mean you'll be cleared, and just because you're guilty don't mean you'll be found guilty. And what our courts have digressed to now is it's digressed to who can tell the best story. Lying is permissible in court. Actually, I was just a part of a trial where all the lies were admissible and all of the truth was not admissible. So a judge can sit there and decide he doesn't want something in or whatever based on his personal bias or whatever. And to be truthful, some of these trials just get outright political. Who's on trial, why they're on trial. And so I'm amazed that there was actually a ruling that, hey, that wasn't done right. Because sometimes things aren't done right and they won't rule that way just based on who the person is or whatever like that. There's a whole lot that goes on. And I just heard a judge say this week on trial when he was admonishing an attorney, and that's another story for another time, and literally told the attorney, hey, uh, just like you guys talk about us judges, we talk about you lawyers too. We're human too, which I thought was very odd for a judge to say from a stand. So I don't know the politics of this case, but the judicial system is very, very political, and sometimes rulings aren't based on case law; they're based on personal feelings. Uh, there are conflicting rulings in different circuits, and now when I look at some of these cases, I also you got to often wonder what's the politics behind it. When you go to court, you don't know who knows who. The prosecutor could have went to law school with the judge, or the defense attorney could have went to law school with the judge, and a lot of it has absolutely nothing to do with the actual facts of the case, and a lot of it becomes a play of whatever. A judge can literally rule any way he wants to rule. He could take a case and say, well, okay, I'm ruling this way because of this case, or say I'm ruling another way because of another case. So, we look at it as cops a different way, because we don't really spend a lot of time in court. Let me tell you what I mean by that. When a homicide detective goes to court, he's not allowed to sit through the whole trial. He's called to testify to his portion, and of course, he's going to be sequestered. But there's a lot more that goes on if you actually sit through the whole crowd. There's a lot of rulings, proceedings, and finagling, and games and stuff like that. And it's just not quite as simple as people think. And there's a lot of things that should be admissible that's not admissible. And sometimes it's not that it's not admissible, it's just that the politics won't allow it to be admissible.
Yeah.
So
And,
it'd be interesting to see what's going on with that.
when I take a look at this as in an investigative eye, the biggest mistake that these gentlemen made was actually kidnapping her and bringing her body in that U-Haul. And I'm sure you know why, what I'm about to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And not that we're encouraging people to unalive individuals, but it would have been much more difficult had they unalived, unfortunately, her in that house than dragging her, because all her stuff is there, right? The
Right.
cell phone is going
Right.
to a fake listing. It was already a
Right.
burner phone involved.
Right.
It's almost like with a gun, and I want you to explain for other people, like, why you don't, if you shoot something, why do you don't bring that gun with you? It's Mangione. Remember that case? He's in trial
Absolutely.
right now. You don't take the weapon with you. You throw that thing right then and there. Could you explain the science behind that? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Right. And you're right. You feel funny talking about this because we don't want someone out there listening and learning how to commit a murder. But all professional hitmen, they don't shoot people with guns that are connected to them in any way. And the minute they use that gun, they drop that gun right there. They're going to use gloves. Why? Because if you get caught down the street and you happen to be in possession of the murder weapon in a ballistics match, well, guess what? If you get caught down the street and that weapon is not on you, but most criminals, I mean, the time I spent in homicide, they use that same weapon for numerous aggravated assaults and murders, and I guess they're not really thinking that through. But but let's talk about something else. There's only one reason to move a body. Anytime we find a dumped body, we know that that body was dumped in order to put distance between the body and the crime scene. Because if the body was found at the crime scene, then the suspect would already be the suspect. Like for instance, you kill somebody in your house and they find the body in your house. Well, of course you're the first suspect. What's a body doing in your house? So if you kill somebody in your house, you've got to take that body and take it somewhere, because you can't stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So usually that's the reason for moving a body. That's why whenever I see a movie, and I actually saw a movie one time where a guy kills a man in his house, then he takes his body and it spent about 10-15 minutes trying to figure out how to get the body out the apartment and move it somewhere, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. He doesn't live there. So why does he think it's important to move that body? So obviously these people probably should have had an ex-cop on the scene to explain that to them when they wrote that particular scene in. But the only reason to move a body is because if you leave that body at that crime scene, it's going to directly connect to you. Unfortunately, moving a body is not easy, and it's not easy to move a body without leaving some very, very trace evidence
Mm-hmm.
that will trace the fact that a body was there.
Right, right. Let's talk a little bit about the prevention of this and what happened to Miss Baugh.
I'm glad you
Um,
said that.
you know, we when we take a look at this case and tear it apart, one of the first telltale signs was New Year's Eve trying
I agree.
to go ahead and who I don't want to put blame on her. I really don't. Her family may be watching, and I can understand how painful that this could be.
Yeah, and she was
But
trying to make money, no doubt.
money,
Yeah.
exactly. You know what I mean? And these people are insisting, please come to this address.
Yes.
We really want to see this. Um, but that's not the only profession that you has to use trust. We got real estate agents, we have social workers, we have travel nurses, so on and so forth, where they're going by themselves to these homes, um, in a vulnerable position.
Hmm.
They're, you know, be damned. How come we couldn't check even in the unlisted parts of MLS? What was going on there? Because that's the part where I can't make sense of, and I don't want to victim blame.
I agree. I agree. You know, I think we're not going to victim blame. I guess what we want to do is just have lessons learned so that people can learn from this. When certain tragedies happen, when things happen, our goal is to make sure, hey, what happened to this person or what happened to us, we don't want to happen to you. And there's a lot of basic precautions that people do. Women are encouraged when they go out on dates to take a picture of the tag number and all that stuff and send it to somebody and let them know, hey, look, I'm just letting you know, whatever. So that person knows, okay, I'm being monitored by somebody else. And,
Oh,
I
I
think,
got a question for you.
go right
I
ahead.
got a great question for you. I
Sure.
mean, I know you know the answer to it. So let's talk about women who are going on that are vulnerable and going on dates like that. Do
Absolutely.
you want them to take their car and pick up the guy, or do you want to have them go ahead and be picked up by that guy?
Man, if they got a car, meet him there. Don't
For
ride in
sure,
his car.
for sure.
Exactly. If that's the case, that's going to be the safest way, uh, because that makes it more difficult. But
Because what I'm saying as a guy, guess what you're not going to do half the time? You're not going to probably kill somebody in your car
that's true
half the
too.
time.
That's true.
So, I know it goes antithetical to what some people might believe. Hey, guess what? That's okay. I'll pick them up. Who gives a hell? That ain't their car. They're gonna kill you in your car.
Yeah.
There's certain things that we know that goes on as investigators that we have to say, hey, guess what? These are best practices. But you're right. The very first thing that we should be telling them is meet them there. Hey, guess what? Let your people know about this and this and that. But we got to teach these things.
But the best thing to do, and I've been a part of this, is kind of funny. You take a picture of the tag, a picture of the car, and a picture of him, and you say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm gonna send this to my brother," and then you FaceTime me real quick, and I'm looking at it, I was like, "Hey, man, behave yourself," you know what I'm saying? And then
Mhm.
go there. So he already knows. Okay, she just sent it to some guy that just said, "Behave yourself," and I have his picture, and I have a tag car, or whatever like that. So he pretty much knows. Hey, look, this, it's sad that it's to that point, but that's where we're at. You even see Uber drivers now videoing inside the car, so that there's a
Mhm.
video of everything that happens inside the car. Not all, but a lot of them do that for safety. It makes sense. That's where we're at now. And those safety precautions have to be put in place. And sharing your location with somebody, of course, got to do a little more to share the location, because you can share the location and then all of a sudden that phone is thrown away and now the phone's no longer with you. But there's other things, other tags that you can have with you that has nothing to do with a phone, that your location is always being monitored. So it's sad that the world's gotten to this point, but that's where we're at now, brother.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
so these are some of the best practice that we can do as former law enforcement to go ahead and make people aware of what would be in their best interest of
Exactly.
going on. And that's not to say that people, and going back to the car scenario, it's not to say that somebody who has a demented mind wouldn't kill somebody in their vehicle,
Absolutely.
but the chances are far less likely of that happening. Because who wants to clean their vehicle or replace their vehicle after something like that? They could care less about yours, but theirs, they're not trying to do that.
Absolutely. You're absolutely
So
right
this,
about that. So that's a
so
good
the
lessons learned. But go ahead.
Right? No. I mean, I think that in many instances, a lot of people don't think of that. They're thinking of, they got a binary choice that, hey, guess what? It has to be either if I have a car and a lot of women, they're trying their best and coming up, and chivalry is 100%. The guy says, hey, guess what? I'll pick you up, but the statistics bear that, hey, guess what? That may be the safer route in that sense when it comes to that particular assault or murder or part one crime in that end of it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
on the, but I would love to hear what the audience has to say, and please comment below on that. And certainly, we like you to go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. Also, as you can see, that I'm wearing some particular merch that I created. Go on to spring.com and you'll be able to see that on our website in YouTube. We're hitting that heavy on that end of it, and we appreciate all the fans, the people who are subscribing, and certainly commenting not only on our channel on YouTube, but even on our socials. You guys are amazing, and we really appreciate that. Brother, that's all we got for today, and I can't wait for the next case because that's going to be something else too. So without further ado, later.